So it's kind of hard to connect with that eternal piece of us if things are always changing. And now what's coming to mind, if I can put an idea on the table for you boys. I've been reading this book by Byung-Chul Han. I've mentioned it before, The Crisis of Narration. And one of the things he's talking about is the difference between information and narrative or story, and how basically we're constantly bombarded with information designed to stimulate. So it's often exaggerated or changed, manipulated, put in a way that's going to catch our attention. And so if our attention is constantly being farmed to this data, this information that's basically meaningless, it carries no context with it. It's kind of, you supply the context of your life, however it's going, to the information you receive. But oftentimes it's the other way around, right? Like the deluge of information just kind of gives this overwhelming sense of overstimulation and smallness, and there's nothing to do but keep your eyes glued to the channel after this commercial break, kind of a thing. And how different that is from a good story, and the type of how you can feel your attention change, even from me describing what it's like to just scroll or to constantly be intaking information. And that difference between kind of what you're saying, Jonathan, that like the stuff that's in between. And so it requires a certain type of listening. It requires really a very attentive ear. And it's not just the ear. I don't know if it's a closing down of attention or if it's a opening up of the circumference of the pipe so that the pressure is lower, kind of a thing. The speed goes down. But there is a real sense, I think, that we need a different type of attention. We need the type of attention that notices what's in the silence and what's between the words, and how the colors relate to each other. To use a painting metaphor, the green on I know that the tree is green, so I'm not noticing all of the pinks and purples and yellows that are kind of reflecting off of it. It's stuff like that I think we are at grave risk of letting control us in this modern day and age. And I really do mean that on like every level. I mean it on the level of like personally, because most of our relationships are, if not completely through internet, or at least kind of have this social media internet tumor on the side of it. It's like we all have this kind of bionic cybernetic appendage that is the internet, that we're kind of constantly, and it's changing the way we have relationships. It's changing what we think of ourselves. It's changing the type of products, what we expect when we purchase a product. It's changing our relationship with governments, because everything now is basically propaganda, or it's a secondhand way to sort you into a demographic bubble that can be manipulated and massaged, and that goes all the way up.
All the way up.
And so there's a really, what I'm saying is the the power of this earth is not the the governments of the earth are not as far as this goes. It goes much further. And so what do we do in the face of kind of the constantly being propagandized to? How should we then live? I have had bad experiences over text with people, and that's rough for things not to be clicking. But then I also wonder, like, I don't think that the problem is just communication through text.
Yeah.
It's like the history of worship of the text almost, to kind of the beginnings of mass media with the newspaper and the like explosion of the Gutenberg press and all this stuff, where text becomes really important.
Who needs actual words? Let's just vibe, and like we'll just look at each other and vibe. We don't actually need to speak. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there's a spiral. We come around to the same spot, but we're up higher now. We're gonna re-enter Eden, where we used to be, where we would understand each other and we would sync up, and we would deeply vibe and stuff. And but we're also going to have this new faculty, which which basically did a number on us, particularly once we connected it to text, because text really removes that musical element. That did a number on us. But once we figure out how to, like when I say cat, when we learn how to see that word iconically, it's pointing to a mystical reality, which is a phenomena in reality. Cats, these beings which you encounter, it's hard to put them into words.
It's the idea that like we are bringing a lot of unagreed upon context to much of our relationships, and so the words don't bring the context. What brings the context is our lived experience. But in some real way, all we have are like words and movements and expressions and works of art in order to relay our experience. And so whenever two humans look at the same words, and you can see that this happens because of scripture, there's like always going to be me bringing my experience to it and you bringing your experience to it. And I think that like one way to say that is faith, because we're bringing a lot of this unconscious context and we're just depending on it. We're depending on it without even thinking about it. We trust that when we learned what this word meant at some point in our history that we've forgotten, that is what the word means. And so you can get into this type of conversation with somebody, and that's fun too. I'm a bit of a word cell myself, so like I'll get down and dirty arguing about what a term means and how we use terms. But like, I guess the piece that's interesting to me is all of those unspoken, unconscious things that we bring that we bring with us along life's merrily way. And so when two people are like looking at the same text, especially if it's text written by, if they're looking at their conversation or whatever, trying to communicate, trying to relate, trying to commune, there is a real sense in which it's more of a miracle when there isn't some huge disagreement or misunderstanding, right? Like and this is why I think you're right about this stuff, Jonathan. I have a bad habit for taking the metaphor somebody chooses or the image that they use and being like, I disagree with this image. I assume that that the map does not match the territory, that the territory is much more complex. And so oftentimes I sound like a devil's advocate, just saying that all maps are bad. But I bring that up to say, and actually it's Neil's turn, so I shouldn't have even said anything at all. But I really like Richard Rohr's take on spiral dynamics, which is that you transcend and include.
Yeah.
And so that, I think there's something about the kind of cyclical nature of a spiral that it kind of grinds my gears a little bit, but that kind of like ever transcending, ever including, I don't know. That's a good way for me at least to wrap my mind around the spiral and not get bored by the, oh, look, I'm only 5 feet further along the vector that I'm going because I've been going in these loop-de-loops.
Yeah.
Wow, isn't life cool?
Like, all models are, it's true. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like there's, I mean, maybe I appreciate that, and especially the reference to, transcending, but also including, maybe to kind of vouch for the spiral a bit. I think in a really not thought out way is just to say that I still think there's more that I haven't understood about it in terms of like, as there always is, but like I think there's something big, particularly about astrology, insofar as like obviously there is this, like I think that the Ouroboros is kind of an image of the zodiac to some extent, and how like there is this circular, the circularity of life. One cannot help but think about the yearly cycle, and it's interesting. I wonder, and also thinking about spiral dynamics. Have you ever seen that video of what it looks like the sun moving through space, and it's
that's the one I've been thinking about this whole time.
Yeah, and I think there's stuff there that I still haven't figured out. Like maybe the sun is going some, like I don't know, but
the universe
going
is
somewhere.
expanding. The universe is expanding and changing, and so our galaxy is moving compared to other galaxies. Our sun is moving relative to other stars in our own solar system. So there is the pattern of circularity, but even in that pattern of circularity, everything is always changing in relation to everything else. Like, it's never where our sun is or where the earth is relative to everything else in the universe will never ever be the same again compared to what it is now. So like where it is compared to the sun will be the same as now, but where it is compared to the sun and Venus and Mars and where McMo is right now will never be the same. So like there are cyclical patterns,
and it's already changed.
Yeah, exactly. So
big astrology today and tomorrow, by the way. Sorry to interrupt, Neil.
no, it's good.